Hello, I'm Glen Larson, and we're here to talk about Manimal. I was executive producer of Manimal. Don Boyle walked into my office, having been sent there by NBC. And usually you have to go to the network to pitch a show. In this case, they liked an idea Don had, and we sat and talked about this concept of a character who not only liked animals, he had a way of turning himself into one. The first thing was to try to figure out all of the things that would make it possible for someone to believe that this particular concept was plausible, as science fiction or fantasy often has to be very carefully constructed to not to lose an audience.
So that's what we're after.
Unfortunately, they put us against probably one of the highest rating shows of all time. It was the return episode of Dallas, in which they were going to finally tell the country who shot JR. It was not an auspicious launch, because if you don't get that big sampling on a movie, when you have a movie rather than a 1 hour episode. And these were the good days when you shot longer. The pilots were longer. I think we made a good movie. A lot of people didn't get to see it, and that's the sadness of it.
Well, maybe later.
Our need was to populate the show with someone with a scientific background, and also an interest in the metaphysical and some of the I won't call them the darker sciences, but things not necessarily mainstream thinking. We needed someone who sounded literate to begin with.
My son, you must have faith and learn.
It's like taking Alec Guinness and presenting him in a science fiction movie. He helps you, he becomes part of your sales force. And Simon McCorkindale was absolutely perfect for that. And he brought a legitimacy and a believability to that character. And so the show was very much on his shoulders.
We tried it your way. This time I think we'll try it mine.
Looking back to see if we considered anyone else, there must have been other people. I'm sure we did see a number of people for that, because I didn't know Simon. Once in a while you know of someone and you just reach out for them, as I did with Buck Rogers and Magnum PI and so forth. I don't recall at this point, and it's been a few years, the exact casting process of that, because I've done so many shows. I just know that when Simon came in to read for it, it was an automatic. He was just right for it.
And I heard that too, Miss.
Melody Anderson was someone I had used in a number of shows as a guest actress.
Until you come out of there, I'm not letting go of anything.
I almost thought Melody should have been in Masquerade. Kirstie Alley wound up doing Masquerade, and she might have been very good for Manimal. In retrospect, I might have flopped those two. It was just one of those things. And I've never discussed that before, but we were casting almost 3 pilots at once. What we ultimately came up with was a core character who would be our hero, Jonathan Chase, a shapeshifter who could turn himself into any animal and use these disguises and guises to fight crime. Only 2 people were aware of this special talent that our hero had. One was his buddy Ty Earl, and the other was a member of the police department, Brooke McKenzie. A lot of people remark that we were lucky enough to get Ursula Andress in the pilot, and well remembered from the very first movie of James Bond, Dr. No. And so she made a natural, heavy with some credential, and a nice addition to the pilot. A change was made after the pilot, and we went to Michael D. Roberts for the series. My only explanation after all this time is that Michael D. Roberts is an amazing reactor, an amazing comedian, and reacting to some of the things that Jonathan Chase could do, he represented the audience, and so his incredulous reactions made the scenes work all the better. Because you always need someone, when you do something incredible, you want to know how people react to it. And he was our, if Chapman would say, cut to the horse, no, cut to Michael. And he'll give us that extra laugh.
Wow, that looked like fun. Sure, if your body's a noodle.
Well, Stan Winston was responsible for the primary incredulous job of turning Simon into various creatures, various animals. And he almost needs no introductions. Stan had worked for me already on Battlestar, but his credentials are legendary of all the great big science fiction movies, and it was almost a must to get someone like him. But it was also a nightmare of work, because normally you would have one character that could turn into one thing, like let's say Wolfman, for example, and that's one process, and you can repeat it over and over and over. But Simon, could go in a lot of different directions, and the amount of time that it required putting him in a makeup chair was really punitive. And so we used as little of the actual direct makeup as we could get away with, because when there are some creatures that you can't really quite make the transition, so you have to let your imagination work. We thought of some other approaches to that, and I think we have a good one up our sleeves, because there's a good chance that we're going to make a feature of this very soon. And it'll have the fun that this show had, and perhaps a larger audience, because this was much bigger in France and overseas than it was in the United States. Well, unfortunately, we've lost Simon, so we would have to find someone new to play the lead. When it comes to a feature, you have the whole world to choose from, and I can think of several people, but at the risk of losing my opportunity to get whoever I don't mention here, or I won't say it here, but you can imagine there's several people out there who would be wonderful in that role. If you're going to do a show about animals, you probably are going to run into a few problems along the way. I can only remember being especially careful around black panthers and rattlesnakes. Most of the others didn't present too many problems for the executive producer of the show. But I had to go out and help pick, one animal over another one, and the handlers and so forth, but it's like casting people. I wasn't aware that panthers are really, a black panther is really a leopard. At least that's what they explained to me. It stopped traffic when we had them out in front of our building, and cars were, these are wild animals. You don't know what they're going to do, even if they're well trained. There's an old axiom in the business about never doing a scene with an animal or a small child, and I don't know how our actors felt about it, but we were very careful to make sure that the animals were particularly dangerous, and so they're not going to fall in love with those over your star, and certainly not over Melody, who was a beauty.
Jonathan, a simple nod would suffice.
And we didn't have a lot of small children around, so I think we got away with that one. The lineage of this show is quite different than any other I've ever had, and especially when it comes to a cancellation. This is a show that found an audience that went, for all practical purposes, invisible, because again, it premiered against Dallas, which would run against it every week, but especially the Who Shot JR episode. So our best foot forward to explain everything was gone. However, there was a core audience out there, because a good friend of mine, he's a multimillionaire. His daughter could have had anything she wanted for her birthday, and she wanted the episodes of Manimal. And he said, I've got to get these for her, or she'll be heartbroken. I said, where was she or a lot of them like her when we needed them? Because little girls like animals a lot, so maybe there was something there. And then later, after that brief episode on, or appearance on NBC, the French network, or one of them, came to us and came to Fox, and I wasn't there at the time, and said they would like to start the show over in France, made by French crews for the French audience entirely. And I don't know what broke down mechanically or business-wise in that. So what does it mean? But again, it was the entire French public was enamored of a show that we only got to make 8 of here. And I never had that experience before. I don't know if that exact syndrome was repeated anyplace else. The UK or any of the other countries, I did well in the UK. But 8 episodes, you don't even have time to have lunch. It's just so quick. And again, that's that snap judgment on a high concept. The audience, the networks often feel that if they don't grab it on its premiere and come right out of the box hot, like Magnum went right to the top 10, Fall Guy went right into the top 10, Knight Rider went right into the top 10. So maybe they got spoiled by those things, but I do think that a show like Manimal
I checked the entire cabinet, Lieutenant.
Needed time.
There's no luggage,
to
no
catch
carry-ons,
on.
nothing.
And for us to find a few adjustments that we could make. If the U.S. cancels a show, it's because it's not getting the ratings. And if they cancel a show after 8, there's certainly not going to be any talk about a second season. They talk about resurrecting lots of shows, and once in a while it happens. It's more likely that this show will have a shot at the big screen before then coming back to television. I never saw that Panther. I am involved in the process of placing some of my shows from television, and I'd like to think of some of them as a golden period. A number of my shows are under option, studios are under, and it just takes quite a while to get a movie off the ground. Willie Nelson once said that getting a movie made in Hollywood is like getting pecked to death by ducks. And I don't know why he knows that so well, but it's a very good antidote. Yeah, it's been asked quite a few times why we don't have quite the number of big shows that did very well from the beginning and lasted a long time. And it's kind of a golden era. You look at the Magnums and the Knight Riders and some of mine, and then Charlie's Angels, Bewitched. There's all kinds of shows that just stand out as fun shows, or very entertaining shows. Shows that come into the living room and you're very comfortable with them. And that was always my goal. The pretty good family entertainment. It's much harder to get a show going today. You'd think there'd be much more opportunity with the proliferation of television channels we have, for example, here. There's a couple of hundred places you can watch shows, which is very good for a show that has maybe a very narrow audience, because you don't need that many, but they also don't put a lot of money into a lot of these shows, so they couldn't do some of these concepts that take a lot of time and they take a lot of money. And then they're doing an awful lot of reality shows that take up so many channels, especially the networks. It's about dancing and singing and all these shows that go back to Major Bowes' Amateur Hour or Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts, going back to the beginnings of broadcasting. They've been popular from the early days, but they weren't so prevalent. And now there's you look at the schedules, and especially on the major networks, they don't have room for an awful lot of drama or comedy even. There still are hits, but it's tough. It would be difficult for me to rate Manimal as a show for what it accomplished. I think we did very well with the concept. I think we could have done better with it, or will if we go to a movie, because I think we know what to do to make it a little more accessible for an audience. But if you don't get sampled, it's like a child that's stillborn, or maybe more tragically, died in infancy. You really didn't get a chance to get to know it and to build it properly. With the best big shows in New York, they open out of town. They get a chance to see where their mistakes are and to build them. When we get picked up, as we did on that show, I think those shows were picked up mid-season. I'm trying to recall. Whatever the timetable on them, bang, you're out there and you're making them. And it's sudden death. And sometimes you win and sometimes you don't. We've had more winners than losers, so for that we're grateful. And we're grateful to have had a chance to try something like Manimal. I'd like to take 1 second to thank all of the people out there who have been so kind to Glen Larson Productions over the years. Not only in the United States, but overseas. We're really grateful for the shows that have enjoyed such large followings overseas. And it's fun for me when I visit abroad and happen to be in a hotel room and see shows, sometimes dubbed, but I don't understand them, but no, it's great. And we're grateful.
Just then I spied a skull and crossbones whipping in the wind off the starboard bow.
Manimal.